Okay, perfect. So we're good to go. Hey there, everybody. Thanks a million for joining and for clicking on the video to discover a little bit more about Kunal Verma, who is the contributor of the month for August 2023. This is the fourth contributor of the month video that we've been putting out since we started rewarding and recognizing the contributors that have been putting a lot of work and dedication into the Commissar project. It's really just one of the pleasures of my job, and I'm really not exaggerating when I say this, to be able to spend time connecting with the contributors who make the Commissar a very vibrant and exciting project in general, because since the start of the project in early 2019, there was a lot of work done from Mohammed, and then when Tail Warden started, there was a lot of work done from the internal team. But over the last 6, even 7 months, the baton has been taken pretty heavily. The majority of the work has been done pretty much fully by the contributors of the community. So it's just great to be able to have a chance to get to know you guys more and to recognize the incredible work that you've been doing. So to get a little bit more information and a little bit more background around Kunal, welcome. And could you, in your own words, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in open source?
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Jake. And I like to take a moment and admire the the time that the Rail Warden community takes to recognize the contributors. I think it's really important, and the entire open source ecosystem, and especially to the new projects who are just getting started into the ecosystem. I think this should definitely send a message that if you admire the contributions, even the smallest contributions, I think that would motivate more contributors to get involved in the community. So I really admire it, and thank you so much for all the amazing work you are doing and creating such an inclusive community. About me, right now I like to call myself a DevOps and cloud native or a cloud advocate. That means I really love helping people out, especially the beginners, in terms of getting started in DevOps, cloud, and open source ecosystem, because I definitely believe that it can sometimes get really overwhelming for especially the beginner folks. And apart from that, I'm also a community manager for the Kubesimplify community, which I think I believe we are going to talk about in the middle of the session. But Kubesimplify is a community started by Sayam Pathak, and again, there we aim helping people out in getting started in the cloud native space, to be exact. And we have blogs. Sayam creates these awesome tutorial videos, and we have the cloud native lab session, which I think we are also going to talk about in this particular podcast. But yeah, apart from that, I really love learning, and I really love interacting with people and getting involved with open source communities. If we go back in time, how the journey began, I'd say it began in the late 2020, when I was in my freshman year of college, and I was just exploring these lot of fields like web development, Android development, and just seeing around, just poking my nose around here and there and seeing what should I do. And I stumbled upon open source, got to know about open source communities, and this sort of interested me because I saw the people who were working in open source. And those were the people who had like 10 or 20 years of experience in the industry, and they were trying to build a community where they are helping even the beginners, and they are also helping the folks who have like 30 years of experience. So that sort of really intrigued me. Who would take out their time from their full-time jobs and help people around, like in order to get started, in order to contribute to a project? So that environment really intrigued me, and I think that is why I came for the learnings, but I stayed for the community. That's what I like to call it. So that's how I got involved. And talking about like the DevOps and the cloud native space, I got involved in that through KubeCon. So if you are not familiar, KubeCon is one of the largest open source conferences in the cloud native ecosystem, and it happens twice a year. So I mean, I was lucky that in the early 2021, due to all that COVID stuff, it happened first time virtually. So I was able to attend it sitting at my home, and that's how I was able to know this vast community of the cloud native and all these amazing people working in there. And I think that really intrigued me, and that's how I got involved in my first project, which was Kubernetes. And yeah, here we are today. I've been contributing. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks very much for that. And do you remember, like looking back over those last few years, maybe even during that KubeCon session, or potentially at some stage in any of your seminars at university, was there any kind of like moment in which something just clicked, or something you were just you saw just how interesting cloud native technologies or the world of open source is? Because I definitely know that there was a click moment for me, but I'd be interested to know if it was maybe one particular moment that you remember, or was it just over like a series of different experiences?
I think it was a series of experiences, and the moment that you're talking about, something got clicked. So I remember once that I was in a Kubernetes meeting, Kubernetes community. When I was just getting started, I used to attend all these meetings that happened inside the team, where they interact with new contributors, and especially the folks. And one thing that they mentioned was that if you're a new contributor and if you want to get involved, it doesn't matter if you have coding skills or you don't have coding skills. So that thing, when I was just getting started, I used to think, okay, coding is something that you really need to know when you're just getting started in open source. I mean, you need to know front end, you need to know back end, you need to know some kind of a tool to just get started. And this particular statement was given by someone who has been involved in the Kubernetes community for quite a while. I don't know if you know Chris Short. So if any one of you are hearing this, Chris Short is a person who has been involved in the Kubernetes community, and he has a lot of experience. So hearing that particular line from him, it clicked that, hey, I mean, I'm just getting started, I really don't know that much of tech around what is happening. This was, I think, my third or the fourth meeting that I was attending, or just trying to get to know the project a little bit more. I mean, hearing this from him, that you can even do non-code contributions and you can still learn in that particular process, I think that particular thing really clicked me. And then I saw a pattern in all the communities that I joined, that whether you are doing code contributions or whether you are doing non-code contributions, even if you are advocating for that particular community, the same thing that I've been doing for Tailwarden and Commissar till now, people actually recognize that work, and you get a lot of shout outs. You learn a lot in the process, and that is also as valuable as you're doing code contributions. So I think that thing really sort of worked as a click for me, that hey, I mean, when I'll reach that point, when I'll know all that particular tech stacks, till that point I can do non-code contributions, I can get involved in meetings, I can advocate for the community, I can write maybe blog posts, right, I can create videos. So till the time I'm ready to do code contributions, I can spend my time learning about the community and do non-code contributions. So I think that really clicked me, and this sort of principle I still apply in all the communities that I joined, and that is what I'm doing in Tailwarden as well. So yeah, that was the moment for me.
Yeah, I totally understand why that would be a pivotal moment for you, because I had a similar moment. I remember when I was still, this was around maybe like 6 years ago. I was working as a teacher, an English teacher in Spain, but English teachers in Spain don't make the most amount of money, and I was planning on moving to Brazil. So I had a side kind of hustle, which was I was a food tour guide in Madrid. So I would go on, I would bring these groups of tourists, and we would go around Madrid. We would like visit 4 different restaurants. It was with a company called Devour. It was a very fun experience. But I remember one group in particular. There was a couple from the United States, and the man, he said that he was like a retired CTO, and he had always worked in the tech industry. And at that time, I was studying a networking certification called the CCNA. So any kind of like chance I had to talk with someone who had real experience in technology, I would always ask them, like, what, in your opinion, what is like the most important skill that you would recommend for me to pick up, or would you recommend for anybody in the tech industry to be successful? And the most the thing that I would expect, or that I expected for someone to answer to that was, okay, you have to be like a really proficient coder. You need to kind of like understand like logic really well. And I just really thought that the most important skill would have to do with kind of concrete hard skills, and to be like very good, like a technical professional. But I was just blown away by the fact that he just said you really need people skills. Like the most important thing in his view were people skills. And I didn't really believe him, or at least at that time, because it was just so counterintuitive. And it just kind of, I see the parallel with your kind of eureka moment, that you realize like, okay, so in the open source world, you can contribute with code if you want, but there's equally as valuable contributions that you can give to communities and projects that kind of involve those people skills and those communication skills, be it through speaking publicly or writing your ideas down in forms of blog posts. And it's just incredible, the fact that there's so many different avenues that you can go down and to make an impact on projects. So very, very interesting to see that parallel.
And I think that if you are just beginning in the open source ecosystem and you really don't know the ways in which you can contribute, I mean, now if I talk about, I mean, if I compare it to when I got started, there weren't a lot of resources that tells you, okay, these are the things that you need to do, or these are the things that you can do in order to get started. Now there are a lot of resources, but I mean, if you are someone who's just getting started into the open source ecosystem and you really don't know how you can contribute, I think the community is, has created a sort of environment where they steer you where, you can go ahead in your journey. So I think just get involved, just go with the flow, I'd say, and you'll find your path and on how you can contribute. You really don't need anyone to tell you how you can contribute. The community will show you the path, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well
Yeah.
put. So speaking specifically about your involvement with Kubesimplify and the Cloud Native Lab series, how did that start? How did you begin with that?
So I'll first answer about the Kubesimplify. How I got involved was, I was already creating content and already, guiding people in getting started with whatever experience I have. I always, this is something, the principle that I go with is whatever experience I have, only speak from those experiences. Okay. So the things in the area in which I don't have any sort of experience, I just say no, hey man, I cannot help you because I don't have experience in this particular field. Okay. I, mention someone else who have experience. So I think Sayam, who started this particular community, Kubesimplify, saw this and he reached out to me, which I was it was very on. I feel very honored, to be honest, when Sayam reached out and he said that, okay, we have a community I'm starting and I would really love for you to be a part of that as an ambassador. So I got involved through there and we set up a meeting and Sayam explained, his vision for Kubesimplify and how he wanted to, create resources, how he wanted to structurize things in a really nice manner, because the fact is that there are a lot of resources now, right? There is abundance of resources if you want to get started into cloud, DevOps, cloud native, or even open source. But for someone who's just getting started, it gets really overwhelming and confusing. What resources to follow, how should I follow them, right? So that's where Sayam, so Kubesimplify actually focuses on creating quality resources, right? Because you can write hundreds of blogs on explaining Kubernetes architecture, but you can only write the one piece that will be remembered by all, right? The one masterpiece that has that kind of sort of that secret ingredient which connects with developers, experienced developers, plus the beginners as well. So though these kind of blog posts or these type of content are very less in the community, and Sayam actually focuses on these type of content. So yeah, this was the main idea, and sort of we created a team of around 25 people called as ambassadors, and that's how the whole Kubesimplify and the community got started. Right now, if we talk about like the community has grown definitely, and Sayam then started an initiative on Twitch. So we were just exploring, different platforms out there to reach out to people, to reach out to the global audience, and we started streaming on Twitch. So firstly, it was Sayam. Sayam was to stream every day, and he used to, it was in Hindi. The streams were in Hindi, and he used to come live at around 5 p.m. IST and used to talk about what is the latest and interesting things happening in the cloud native ecosystem, just to advocate for, just to let people know that okay, this is something that is happening. And if you are someone who's looking for more opportunities, or if you are someone who's looking for more things to learn, this is the area that you can go ahead with that. uh, After that time, I thought that let's create another series, right, where we are building projects live. So the whole idea of the cloud native lab that you just mentioned there was, you have a lot of tutorials out there, right, which shows okay, this is something that we are building, and let's build it, and after 1 or 2 hours you have a project ready, right? But I believe that tutorials that are online are kind of filtered. So what do I mean by filtered is, you won't see the mistakes that happened during the creation of that particular project, right? So the person who is creating that particular project, he would have, for example, tried 50 times, and the project would have failed 50 times, and the 51st or 52nd time would be the one that it worked, and that's what you are seeing in front of you, right? But the mistakes or the errors that particular person would have faced, it's not visible to you. And I think, I definitely believe from the personal projects that I have created, the main learnings is from the errors, right? Searching for the errors, trying to spend at least 2 days going through Google, going through all these particular platforms, all these forums, and trying to debug that particular issue. And when you debug it, the feeling that you get is on another level, right? So that was the main essence of the cloud native lab. I wanted to build the project live from scratch, and especially the technologies in which I haven't worked till now, right? So the idea was that I'll learn live. I'll, whatever I'm learning, I'll put that into use, I'll put that into the project, and the errors which I'm facing, I'll try to solve that live. I'll try to Google search live, because I feel that people have this misconception sometimes, that if you're Googling, you're not a good developer. You are just Googling stuff, and you are just seeing answers, and you are just copy pasting code. I don't think that's true, because a good developer is who knows how to Google things in a fast manner, or in an efficient manner, right? And that's what I've learned from the community, and that's what I wanted to show live to other people. And I think, yeah, we had a lot of fun building the Commercer project in the 9 episodes, right? This was the very first project, and the idea for that came, sorry if I'm taking a lot to answer this, but the idea for this particular project came as I was involved in the Commercer community, and I wanted to build something with that. Two things. Firstly, I wanted to learn about Commercer, and second thing, I wanted to build a project for Kubesimplify. So that sort of gave me the idea. Okay, let's combine the both. Let's combine these both and create a project where we are using Commercer, and we are doing it live for the Kubesimplify community. So that, yeah, that's how the idea came. And I didn't imagine that it would take 9 episodes, and like, you cannot see the streams right now, because Twitch has this policy of they just keep the streams for like 7 days. But if you would have seen the streams, you would have seen that each of the streams would had gone more than 2 hours. So I was sitting there, learning, building live, interacting with the chat, speaking for more than 2 hours, and it took like 9 episodes to build the entire project. It was a fun journey. I learned a lot, and yeah, I mean, that was the entire journey, and we had quite a fun. And we also had a really nice response from the community as well. So I'll definitely work hard from the next project that we're going to build. So yeah, that was the entire journey.
No, thanks a million, and thanks a million for touching on the 9 episode series that you did for Kubesimplify, in which you put Commissar. You implemented it from start to finish, because yeah, that's one of the main reasons why it was a pretty easy decision to choose you as contributor of the month for August. because it was super informative, and I completely see the value in going through that non-filtered way of learning, right? Like it's just completely all in the open. You're because it's the difference between going to a bakery and looking at a really nice and beautiful cake. Sure, like the baker can kind of like give you the recipe, but there's really no comparing you actually being there behind the wall, and then building the or making the cake alongside the baker. So yeah, that's it was really, really cool to see all of that work. One thing that I was wondering though, while you were mentioning the different kind of like project based learning, and you said that it was like an example, or it was a way for you to learn and to expose yourself to technologies that you didn't have that much experience with in the past. Have you learned anything about your particular learning style that you weren't that aware of before implementing these projects live?
Yeah, I think that the learning style, I would say, I discovered previously, and that was in the this year only, in the month of April. And previously, before that, I was learning through tutorials, video tutorials. I used to go on YouTube and search for whatever I want to learn. And I mean, that was good, that was okay, and I built like a few small projects. But the thing that really clicked me, and this is one of again one of the moments where something clicked. And I took part in a hackathon, and it was organized by VMake Devs, which is a community by Kunal. Shout out to him, he was doing an amazing work. And I mean, we teamed up like 4 people, and we built a project related to Kubernetes and something called as OAM. So it was Open Application Model. And during that time, I mean, during that, I think it was, the deadline was 1 week, so we had a period of 1 week. We had to understand the OAM technology from scratch, and we had to build something showing the use case of that. So during that time, I just something clicked with me, and I said, okay, I'll not watch any video tutorials, I'll just learn from the documents, the documentation of Kubernetes. And during that 1 week, the amount of concepts in Kubernetes I learned from scratch, from ground zero, I wasn't able to learn it in like 2 or 3 months. That thing really, sort of, I was shocked, to be honest, that hey, learning from the document. And because it's not just learning from the documentation, did the thing. It was whatever we were learning, we were trying to implement it in a real project, right? Even the smallest part of that, right? And I think that sort of motivated me to learn fast and then implement it quickly. So after that, I observed, after that, I also got involved in one another project in Kubesimplify. And I observed that when I had a end goal in mind, when I had a certain project in mind, I tend to learn faster, and I tend to learn more. So this is something that I observed from those two instances. And that is something that I have been trying to follow for everything that I learned right now. Get a project, even if you are getting idea from somewhere else, right? One of my personal projects I still remember, which I created recently, the idea I took from someone on LinkedIn. Someone had posted a really big project on LinkedIn. I took that idea, I changed 2 or 3 tools that were being used. So, I mean, indirectly, I implemented that project from scratch because I entirely changed the platform. That project was built on GitHub. I took it to GitLab. So I changed the entire platform. The idea is same and everything was same, just the tools were different. And I implemented that project from scratch. And oh my god, the amount of learnings that I had, it took me around 1.5 months to build the project. But I was really happy with the amount of tools I had learned, with the amount of concepts that I learned. And one thing that I would also connect that to the unfiltered thing that I mentioned of tutorials is that while I was building that particular project, right, I used to refer to video tutorials as well. And okay, they showed the implementation, but when I tried the same implementation on my own, it sort of throwed me a very weird errors, many weird errors. And those errors were not shown in that tutorial. So I had to work my way up, Google stuff, and that sort of really changed the way I look at learning things, right? So I'd say, to answer your question, what pattern or what thing that I used to learn, the method I used to learn is take a project in mind, have it as an end goal, and learn everything from scratch. And that's how I got idea for the cloud native lab as well.
Incredible. I think you're an example of like someone who, through action, you've realized that there's, well, I was going to say two different ways of acquiring knowledge, or at least reaching goals, at least in the tech industry. And those two kind of that at least come to mind now. Of course, there might be more. Is that it depends on what you want to achieve. Like if you want to get a certification, which are quite valuable in some cases in technology, like if you want to get like an AWS certification or any other kind of like provider certification, tutorials are great, and going through like the theory and acquiring the theory is great, because that's what you're going to be tested on, that's what you're going to be asked about. But there's this other side, which is the much more fun, much more relevant, and probably this just the other side of real work that you're more than likely going to be engaging in your real life, in your real professional life, which is using, creating, kind of building, using these building blocks that you learn about. So this is, I must admit, like this is something that it took me a little bit of time to realize, because from someone who didn't come from a computer science background, my way in through a good few my way into technology was through certifications, and I used to like spend a lot of time studying the theory, and it took me a while to realize no, but if I want to be able to get my hands dirty, if I want to actually acquire knowledge that's actually going to stick, you have to build, like you have to have exposure to those weird errors that you don't kind of understand where they're coming from, and then work to solve them. And then once you solve them, then you understand why, and you just really don't get that through studying for certifications. So
That's actually a really good point, and I would like to extend your point to something that you mentioned about certifications. It's a really nice opportunity for you to learn, and definitely you can learn the theory, but it's really important to learn it practically. And this is a mistake that I made recently. I mean, at the start of the year, I prepared for the HashiCorp Terraform certification, which is the HashiCorp Terraform Associate. I passed the certificate, and I had very nice knowledge of Terraform back then when I was preparing. But the mistake that I made was I didn't implement those concepts in a particular project. I didn't build any project. Once I did the certification, once I passed it, I was like, okay, it's cool, let's move ahead. I didn't build any project using Terraform, and I didn't do anything about that. And now if you'll ask me those concepts, I don't remember them. I only know the basics of Terraform, but I still remember that I learned a lot of concepts back then, and I don't remember them now. So that was a very big mistake. And if you are seeing right now, this is something that you can truly, I mean, feel the mistake that I made, and you can now see the importance of whatever you are learning, try to implement it, in some sort of way. And again, while I was thinking about the project for the cloud native lab, you would see Terraform there as well. So I really wanted to use Terraform because I had forgotten the concepts and I wanted to revise them. So I revised those concepts through this particular project. So that was again one of the reasons I put Terraform there.
so apart from choosing a project to work on because you're interested in the particular technology stack, and especially if it's something that you haven't learned before, it's a good excuse to just pick it up from scratch and to see where you can learn from zero. But what other things do you look for in an open source project for it to be, well, first of all, attractive for you to learn more, or to want to learn more, or attractive to even want to contribute? What are you looking for when you're evaluating open source projects in general?
I mean, the same question, if you'll ask an experienced developer, he or she would say that I see the use cases, I see, how can that particular project solve a particular problem. But I'm a beginner, I am just getting started into the space right now. If you ask me this question, I look for the community behind the project. I look how the inclusive community is, and in terms of learning something, I mean, definitely I go through the docs and I read the use case, how the project is being used in the industry, and how what problems it can solve, and should I learn it right now or should I add it to my to-do list, can do it afterwards. But they really think that the main thing that matters is the community behind that project. If the community is inclusive, if you know I mean, that's the hard truth, I believe. Every community in the open source ecosystem is inclusive, and everywhere you go, you'll definitely, meet nice people like Jake here, and who will help, to get you started. But I've seen some communities where you are not able to get that kind of help. The maintainers might not be that much active, and the resources would be spread around and they won't be unstructured. They would be unstructured. You can definitely get involved and help them structure that a bit. But I think that gets a bit difficult if you're just beginning. So the one thing that is really important to me is the community behind that project, and the second thing would be the use case, right? What the problem the project is solving. And right now, at my particular stage where I am right now, how that particular use case is connected with me, right? So cloud cost monitoring was connected with me because I have faced the issue myself. I was billed around 1,000 rupees because I had left an EC2 instance running and I didn't know about it on AWS cloud, because I was just learning to the concepts. And cloud cost monitoring was something which Commissar is solving, right? And that is sort of which connected with me. Plus, you have a really nice community at Tailwarden and Commissar, and you have amazing people like Jake and Mohammed and all the amazing maintainers of the community. So yeah, I think for now, I'd say the community plus the use case is something that I see, and I think, okay, let's give it a try. Let's give this project a try, and let's try to get involved. But I really have to watch for that, because I tend to get excited a lot. I tend to join like 2 or 3 communities simultaneously, and that's not practical at all. Again, I have learned it through mistakes. So I tend to keep my search between 1 to 2 projects right now. And if you ask me right now, I'm just involved in Commissar, Tailwarden, Kubesimplify, and one other open source project, which is Kubernetes. That's it. So yeah, the rule which I follow is keep your list short and try to add value, rather than be spread across 10 communities and you're not able to do anything about that.
I know what you mean, and I totally feel your frustration because I know it's hard. Like you see a cool project coming up,
Yeah.
there's always trendy, not only like momentarily trendy. Like sometimes there's projects that are really cool, and you join the Discord, and then you just realize that yeah, that's another Discord to the list. That
Yeah.
and then it's hard to engage with them every week. Yeah, I've the same issue. But yeah, thanks for that advice. Keeping it short and trying to focus on adding value. I think that's the most important thing. Um, I had one more question for you because you mentioned that you're a beginner, but I've also realized through a few of these conversations that I've had, especially a few conversations that we've had with some of the speakers that came on for the AMAs that we've had in the past, the realization that many times the beginner or someone who has just gone through an experience, an educational experience, is many times the most is the person that will have like the most authority, or at least that they will be able to help another person who is also a beginner, especially because the beginner who has just gone through something and has understood it will be able to kind of maybe empathize a little bit better with someone who's closer, as opposed to like a senior developer or software engineer.
Yeah.
So even though you consider yourself a beginner, you are very, very good at communicating. You're very, very good at um, synthesizing and making knowledge quite accessible to others. So in your opinion, what would be some tips that you've kind of picked up over these last few years that you would try to impart to beginners who are starting off their open source journeys?
Sure. I mean, I definitely agree with your point that someone who has just gone through that particular experience can guide a beginner better as compared to someone who has passed that experience 10 years ago. So I definitely agree. And for the tips, I mean, from my experiences, I would say there are three things that I would definitely like to mention. The number one is, whenever you will ask someone, how to get started to open source, like what's the first step? So they'll say that get started, right? This is the number one thing that they say. But I mean, if you are beginning, this is again my perspective, totally my perspective on this. If you are someone who doesn't know their way into this open source community and this is something new for you, just saying them get started won't work, because you would have to tell them, okay, get started, but how? The question is how, right? And a lot of people who are just getting started don't ask this question by themselves because they are shy. They don't know if they should, or if they sound, they'll sound silly, or they'll have all these sort of doubts, right? So I'll tell you how. This is the simple thing that I've observed, and that has worked for me, is the number one thing you should do is get to know the community first, right? Whichever project that you want to get involved in with, get to know the community, join their Slack or join their Discord channel, right? Try to firstly introduce yourself, right? Tell them about your interest, tell the people about your interest, what you're interested to work on, right? And just get involved in the conversation, casual conversations, right? Whatever people are talking about, just try to input in your opinions. Try to suggest the community if you have some kind of suggestions, and attend the meetings, right? The communities that have, we have weekly sessions at Tailwarden as well, where we discuss what are the contributors working on and what are some things that you want to work on. And all the community which I have been a part of, like the Kubernetes community, or I mean, there is sort of a pattern that follows. The big the community is, the many meetings it will have, right? This is sort of the pattern which I've observed. And if we talk about Kubernetes, which is, I mean, the second largest open source project in the world, it has a lot of meetings, right? So meetings is a way for you, I'm talking to the new contributors right now, meetings is a way for you to get involved in the community, to get to know the community, right? To get to know the people who are working behind that community. Once you are there, once you understand how the community works, you'll get comfortable with the people. Then you start understanding the project. What does the project does, right? how you can how you can contribute to that project based on the areas or based on the things that you already know. For example, if you're a front end developer, if you're a back end developer, right? If you know blogs, if you like writing blogs, if you like creating videos, so once you understand the project, in that particular process you will understand the area in which you want to contribute in. And now you have two things: you know the community people, you understand the environment, plus you also know the area in which you want to work on. Now you can ask the maintainers or ask the people, hey, this is something that I want to work on, can you please point me to the right direction? If you'll do this, it would be, number one, easier on you, because now you are sort of friendly with the community people, right? And you know the community environment better as compared to when you just joined, right? And then you ask the maintainers from front, hey, I am interested to work on, these are the areas that I want, these are the areas that I'm interested to, can you please point me in the right direction? And then definitely do in most cases, right? So that's how you can get started. I mean, definitely, if you, I remember you asked this question to Avinesh as well, who is one of the maintainers of the project, and he said that you can get started by issues as well. That's also a way, right? If you are a tech geek, and if you are someone who likes to just get started with things like Avinesh does, I know him, he gets fired up when he sees a really nice issue, you can get started that way as well. But that, the thing that I mentioned, getting involved in the community, getting to know the people, attending meetings, and then understanding the project and the areas in which you can contribute, that has worked for me in all the communities that I've joined in. And I definitely feel that if you're just beginning out, if you're just a beginner who's getting started, this method that you can definitely follow if you want to get involved in any open source community, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
I was just going to say that it's very fitting that your tips on how to get started is specifically, it reminds me of what you said was your eureka moment, right? The
Yeah.
realization that there's a lot of value that you can give to projects through non-code contributions. You're talking about engaging with the community, building relationships, participating in meetings. These are all things that are kind of like closer to like the people skills of open source, right? And so it's very, very fitting that that those are the tips that you would give people, because many times that's not those aren't the tips that people offer, or that you usually hear, right? Because there's absolutely nothing wrong by diving straight in and heading over to the open issues, but that's not the only way, and it doesn't have to start there for every single person's open source journey. So thanks for that.
Yep, I definitely agree. And it's really important right now, the times that we are in, we see a boom in the number of contributors that are, getting involved in open source. And I see this sort of, the the vibe is not good, to be honest. They have created a sort of a competition kind of thing in open source as well, right? As we have exams, they are talking about cracking GSOC, cracking LFX mentorship, who's the first contributor who'll get this particular issue. I have seen that. And I really don't, to be honest, I really don't like this kind of environment, right? So that's why I've been advocating, and that's why it's really important, especially if you're beginning, to understand the feeling, to understand the main crux of open source community, which is inclusivity and empathy. These are the two principles that on which an open source community is built, right? So if you're beginning, you really need to understand this, and you really need to keep that competition kind of spirit aside, right? And this is the hard truth, to be honest. And I really see, now I see a lot of experienced folks talking about this as well, and it's really good. I think we should also talk about these kind of things, rather than just guiding people know how to get started, because these are also important. If you really want to, you really want to build connection, that like you mentioned, right? Open source is not just about contributing to code and moving ahead. It's about building connections, right? And remembering, building friends as well, right? So yeah, that is something that is tip number one. And tip number two is really simple. We have talked about this a lot, is code or non-code contributions doesn't really matter, just get involved, right? And in whichever area you are comfortable with, in whichever area you feel that you can get started, just get involved, right? Now, one thing that I would really like to mention here is if you want to grow, right? If you really want to grow in the open source ecosystem, or the your career as well in the open source communities, don't get comfortable in one area only, right? For example, if you are someone who's, as a beginner, if you are someone who's comfortable with writing blogs, that's great. That is your area of getting involved at the start. But once you get the hang of it, don't get too comfortable in that particular area, right? Try to explore more. Try to, if you are someone who's interested in content creation and you don't have experience in making videos, try to make videos, right? Try to interact with people more. Try to start your own podcast on maybe Twitter or YouTube, right? So I mean, you can start non-code, you can start code contributions as well, that is upon you. But I'm just saying that don't get too comfortable in one area. Try out different things that makes you uncomfortable. That's how you learn more. I'll give my example. I mean, I was a DevRel intern at a company called Deftron previously, in the previous year. I did that internship for like 4 months, and in that, I tried everything. Which I tried was things that got me uncomfortable. For example, I hadn't hosted a live stream till that particular internship. I hadn't been the only one who was speaking there on live stage, 50 people or 50 to 100 people watching. But I did it during the internship, right? The other thing which I did was, I mean, I haven't wrote a blog post in one night. So a task was given to me the night before, and they just told me, you have to write a blog post, and it had to be published at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I sat the entire night. I wrote the entire blog post, and I also had to do some kind of research as well behind it. And that was a really new experience for me. And that's how I came to know, hey, I can do it. This is something that I can do. I didn't know it. I didn't know it before because I hadn't done it. Right. So try to do the things that you haven't done before. Don't, get comfortable. And that's how you'll grow, as you'll see. Right. Something which I've also noticed is that, why people don't think that non-code contributions can be of value is because they think, okay, I mean, I can write blog posts, right? I'll do this repeatedly. When you do things repeatedly, right, you don't see value in that after some time, right? This is something that I've observed. And if you'll do multiple things, right, if you'll do different things across the time you have been contributing, you'll get excited, and secondly, you'll see yourself grow, right? So this is something that I wanted to mention. So in summary, do non-code contributions, do code contributions as you fit, but don't get comfortable in one area. Try to explore all the different fields, and that's how you'll grow. And last advice I like to give, I'm really sorry, and I'm extending this particular point, but don't get disheartened if you are not able to contribute, because I've seen a lot of people, tend to, see, hey, I'm not able to contribute to this community. I'm not able to understand the project, and I think this is not something for me. I think I should, go somewhere else. Don't do that. I have done it and I have regretted it. So I'm talking about from my experience. Don't get disheartened if you're not able to contribute. Try to stick around. Try to, talk with the maintainers. The more you talk, the more you express your feelings with the community people, the people who are maintaining the project, the more support they'll give you, and the more it shows that you are genuinely interested to contribute. It would be definitely the case that you'll find some, roadblocks, you'll find some challenges when you're contributing, but when you'll talk it through, talk it out through the maintainers, to the community people who are there, you'll definitely you'll definitely come to a conclusion that, this is the area that I can get started, right? So, and you'll not regret it, and you'll not have that kind of a feeling that, okay, I should have, stuck there for a while and, tried something else. So yeah, don't get disheartened, and you can definitely do it. I believe in you. Yeah, that's something I'll say.
Perfect. Thanks a million. All very actionable and incredible advice. If anyone's starting out, I think they would be on very good footing if they follow that. So thanks a million. Yeah, I think we can leave it there. I don't have any other questions for you, and I'm already taking up a lot of time in your last week of exams, so I'm going to give you back some time. But Kunal, thanks a million. It's again on our side, it's just been a pleasure collaborating with you and seeing the incredible amount of value that you've been able to offer by, first of all, attending meetings, asking really good questions, giving really great feedback, especially with the documentation around the platform choices, and of course the actual series on the Cloud Native Lab. It's just a pleasure to have you as part of the community, and we hope to have you as part of the community for for much more time to come. So yeah, all the best in your exams. Thanks a million again, and see you soon.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Okay, so